Hey everyone, this is Joseph again, and we are coming back to you. And this time, I'm so excited. We've got Stephen Reid, who is working with our young adults here at New Vision, and Stephen has just been a great asset, to our team and just what he's been doing, and him and Tiffany. And so excited, Stephen, to have you here on the team with us.
Yeah.
And we are going to be talking today about hybrid groups. As we know, this is kind of new to us and New Vision, and this is something that, as we just kind of see as time goes along, this is going to be something that's going to become a regular part of what maybe you do in your group life. And so what I wanted Stephen to do, because this is what they've been doing with some of our younger adults, is I want him to just come and just share a little bit of just some best practices about the hybrid group experience. As we know, we've got two kind of definitions with hybrid group. One definition of a hybrid group is one that meets online, and then maybe they meet in person. And so their hybrid group is just basically the space that they're using. But I think you're going to hear as well a different take with Stephen, is that they use the hybrid group experience where it's something where they would meet online as well as in person. And so you have both groups meeting simultaneously. And so, Stephen, well, I just want you to just share a little bit of what that looked like for you guys, just some best practices that we could just kind of take away from this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we had in the month of June is an opportunity for the two groups to meet in both in person and also on Zoom, and in large part because we had some that still weren't able to feel very comfortable maybe meeting in person, and also because of some job restrictions of coming to an in-person meeting and then going back to work. And instead of jumping through all those hoops, we decided that we could try to do both and. And so the first time that we attempted this, we realized there's a few things that we could tweak and kind of work on. And so a few things that I might encourage to those of you that would like to try this, maybe about 5 practices to put into place. And number one would be just the logistics of it. I would very much encourage you to make sure that you have the technology in place. Have it ready to go, do a practice run long before the night of or whenever your group is going to meet. And then the other logistics are your leaders. You need your facilitator or your teacher, and then you also need someone who will be very much diligent of monitoring the Zoom chat or the Zoom meeting. And so for lack of a better term, I'm going to call that person the monitor. So you need those 3 big things for logistics. So that would be number one.
All right.
The second thing that I would say is you want to make sure when it comes to people arriving, we found this very important after our first meeting, is that, say, for example, your meeting's at 7:30. We found that it would be best for the in-person people to show up about 15 minutes beforehand. So as far as they were concerned, we started at 7:15. And what that does is, over the years, we've discovered that the way that you start the meeting, the way that you greet people, sets the tone for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
And so if we could meet those in-person people and let them feel welcomed, then when it came time around 7:30, that's when the monitor would make sure that they start admitting the Zoom group in. And then we would begin meeting with them and just kind of have a chance to kind of interact with one another.
Yeah,
So,
you didn't want those late walk-ins, right? People coming in,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah, we definitely found that goes a really, really long way. As opposed to the first night, it was interesting. Then the other thing that we noticed was, just for a lot of people, it's going to be new. Most people have done Zoom. And as we all know, if you do Zoom, if there's even any background noise on anyone's device, it can be really distracting or you can't really hear. And so the third thing that I would say is a good practice, even if it goes on for a while, is at the beginning of every meeting, have that introduction to set those guidelines and parameters. So just as a reminder of, if you're on Zoom, go ahead, if you would, mute yourself. And then also, for those who are in person, try to be just aware of not talking over each other, because the people on Zoom just can't distinguish too many voices at once. And so we really wanted to make that a priority as well, as far as before we launched into the meeting itself, is let's take a second to be reminded of what we're doing.
Cool.
The fourth thing is, in the meeting itself, during that time, this is when the one monitoring the Zoom chat is really essential. What we did is, my wife was the monitor for us in our living room, and she was sitting right next to me with a laptop. And what she found over the course of these meetings was if the Zoom group could actually see me teaching, so she would actually point the device just a little bit so that they could actually see me, they stayed more engaged. And then she also made the point of using the device that if someone who was in person was talking, she would also turn the device, because if you can see the person talking, it just keeps the Zoom group a little bit more engaged. So
Yeah.
that was a big help from her. That was just kind of on the fly, but it was a good addition that she did as well.
Can I ask a question on that real quick?
Yeah.
Whenever somebody would maybe from the Zoom side of things have a question for you, would they, like, would you tell them, hey, raise your hand on the Zoom, or would your wife ask the question, or would they even ask the question out loud to the group? How did you handle questions?
That's a great point. So we had all of the Zoomers muted, and so we told them beforehand, kind of in that introduction, we want you to have a comment, we want you to participate, and so if you do, the monitor is going to be watching for either within the chat, or you might just raise your hand and just let someone know, let the monitor know that you have something to add that you would like to share. And so because the monitor, who was my wife, was right next to me, she would either tap me on the arm or just interrupt me, because she's my wife, and just say, so-and-so from Zoom has a comment. And so then at that point, as the facilitator or teacher, I could say to the group, okay, and then I would almost kind of introduce or be like, hey, so-and-so from Zoom is going to share, that kind of thing, just so that there's not any overlapping noise, so people can hear each other.
Great. All right.
One of the other things, as far as logistics, that was actually an interesting point. We did this meeting at one of our young adults' homes, and they had the ability that I couldn't figure out of setting this all up on their television. And so we were actually able to see everyone on Zoom much clearer and be able to see them. The difficult part was we just needed a little bit more cords and length of cords for the device that was hooked up to the TV with the camera to be able to actually move it around. Yeah. So that night it was a little bit more restrictive. But it's also another resource that if you have that ability and that technology, that's a big resource as well.
Yeah, there's adapters, HDMI, adapters that you can do, and those will connect in easily, from your TV. So that's great. What a great point on that.
Yeah. And I would say the last thing, the fifth thing, is the way that you dismiss. We found this, again, the monitor, my wife, Tiffany, did a great job with this the very first night. Is as soon as we were done meeting and we all prayed together, at that point, there's just that natural feel of we're done. And so everyone in person began to really interact and get pretty loud, which is great, good fellowship. But everyone on Zoom was they had no idea what was going on. Just a lot of noise. And so the monitor did a great job of taking that device, going to a spare room. And in the same way that we wanted to be intentional about greeting people in, we want to be intentional about dismissing people. Yeah. And so the monitor took that time to go into the room and just visit with that group on Zoom, just have a time of brief fellowship, if you will, and then also kind of see them out the door. And then I, as the facilitator, did the same thing in person, of fellowship, and then also seeing them out the door. But we found that was also a really good resource as well. And Tiffany, the monitor, even found that afterward, some of those on Zoom actually started sharing even a little bit more, because it felt a little bit more engaged at that point, and they actually had a few things that they wanted to add that maybe they didn't feel as able to during the course of the meeting. And so it ended up being a really sweet time for that little Zoom group to kind of wrap up as well.
Great. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. Guys, just great tips and just really best practices that you're hearing from experience. And, we know that this can be a time where you're trying different things, but we want you to hear that there really are some best practices for you out there. And so making sure in this hybrid group experience that you've got somebody that's facilitating, leading the discussion, but somebody as well that's monitoring that chat and then able to communicate from that chat or from that Zoom experience to the group so that they maintain that they are a part of the group. So thank you, Stephen, so much. Really do appreciate your ministry, brother, and excited for what's still ahead in our days to come. So
I appreciate it. Thanks.
all right.